Welcome, everybody. Welcome to Second Banana Media. I'm Phil Nichols, and we are joined today with Mr. Matt Baty. Matt's the founder of Six Man Strategies. Matt's also a former senior associate athletic director, University of Kansas, as well as a first-team All-Big 12 baseball player. Should have been first-team All-American, but we'll leave that for everybody else to decide. That's what I think.
Yeah.
But another little tidbit, Matt. You hold a record that makes my back hurt every time I hear it. Matt Baty still holds the record for all sports at the University of Kansas for the squat, 865 pounds. That's my first question is, why would anybody want to do that?
Right? I think it was a prank more than anything. I think the guys just got around and I got motivated, and I was probably juiced up on some type of energy drink, and you know, when you get betted by your buddies, you know, you do anything.
That's right. Well, hey, seriously, you know, all things I just said are true, especially the part that he should have been an All-American. But no, I appreciate you being here. You've got a real unique background, Matt. You know, you've done it all. You've been a high-level athlete. You've coached. You also are the owner of 316 Baseball and other businesses. Owns multiple businesses, but very accomplished guy. But NIL, name, image, and likeness. This is something that you're very heavily involved in now with the University of Kansas. I think you also, I believe you work with some other universities. I'll let you offer that up. But you know, it's something that over the last few years became very prominent. It's changed the landscape of collegiate athletics, I would say. But what I want to talk about today, if you'd like to share this, is explain to us kind of how it came about. How does it work? Because there's a lot of misunderstandings about what does it really mean. I think people think the university's got all this pot of money sitting there that they're doling out. You know, I think there's just a lot of misconceptions. So if you don't mind, just kind of walk us through how name, image, likeness functions.
Yeah, no, I appreciate, Phil, the opportunity to come in and speak and talk a little bit. And, you know, probably 95% of what I do is education. It seems like, especially with the fan base and donor bases of universities. And when I do podcasts or radio shows, it seems to go that way with education, because there's just a lot of unknowns out there. There's a lot of you know, the bad word for so long was the bad words were, you know, paying student athletes. And I lived that in college athletics as a fundraiser. Those were taboo words of paying student athletes. Well, now, you know, we can put money in the pockets of these student athletes. And so with the donor base and fan base for so long has been told, I can't do this, I can't do that because I'm a booster. And now they're able to do that. And so, yes, there's some rules and regulations around that. And that's why, you know, us as Six Man Strategies, we support the student athletes through this. But, you know, going back to July of 2021, the NC2A and you know, I think NC2A gets bad rap, right? Obviously for multiple reasons. But where this stems from is overregulation by the NC2A ends up in the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court basically comes out and says, hey, student athletes can now can benefit from their name, image, likeness. I think we would all agree that to some extent, maybe not to the extent that you're seeing across the country at some institutions, but first, you know, I think we all agree that players deserve the right to be able to make money on their name, image, and likeness, because the universities sure have. And so, so basically, it got kicked back to the NC2A, and they're absolutely terrified of litigation, because that's how we ended up in the Supreme Court, and basically just threw up on the institutions and said, basically, hey, for the first time ever, we're not going to overregulate something. Just go out and student athletes can do what they want. And then you got the birth of these collectives. You got the birth of these third-party organizations, is because these institutions, they have day-to-day operations that they got to run. They don't, you know, have time or the energy or the resources to get into this. And then there's some limitations. Obviously, the athletic departments can't get involved with solicitation of gifts and things like that. So So they quickly looked to the state to make decisions. And what you saw out of the gate was you had certain states that were very progressive, and then you had certain states that just cracked down, and it became a recruiting disadvantage, if you will, across the landscape. And so the institutions that were the states that were more progressive, their institutions had some a head start, if you will, and those that were a little bit more conservative were being held back. And so now you're seeing those states that were more conservative open things up, and now you got the Wild Wild West, which the NCAA is now trying to get their hands on, and that's the situation we're in today.
Yeah, one thing is interesting, Matt. I just saw today that the University of Alabama's girls softball team, 6 players, I believe it was, have let Alabama know they're entering the portal.
Wow.
And so I think we always talk about football. We always think football, basketball. We think about what everybody perceives as the major sports, right? In college athletics, they get all the attention. But this is having an effect across the board in every sport.
Yeah, no question. I mean, it's happening in every sport. This transfer portal, the NCAA again, tried to, because they were terrified of litigation and things like that. They went a direction and opened up this portal that allows student athletes during a certain time period to get a free pass, basically, to go anywhere they want. It used to be, the seniors, if you graduated, you could transfer right away, and I thought that was a good policy.
Yeah.
And now they've really opened it up, and now these coaches, they don't only recruit them when they're in high school or in junior college, they're now recruiting them while they're on their bench, or their starting 5. They're recruiting them all over again. And so this is chaotic right now. I think there has to be, and we can talk about this later on, there has to be some legislation that gets passed to prevent some of that, because it's just chaos. But you're seeing it left and right here in Wichita. We had at Wichita State, the basketball team, we had, I don't even know what the number is. I think we had 9 kids transfer out. That is it's going to kill you. It's going to kill a team. Now, what it does also, it gives programs the opportunity to go get better quicker, right?
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
What you're seeing is these kids, okay, now that they have the freedom to go wherever they want, these institutions are now saying, well, if you have that freedom, then I have the freedom to go get whoever I want. And behind closed doors, they're asking kids to transfer so they can go get the players that they want to win right away.
One thing that's interesting, Matt, that I've noticed, living in Oklahoma, everybody's watched what's happened with Lincoln Riley going to USC. USC just picks up another, Blitnikoff winner. I believe it was right at $3 million name, image, likeness deal he signed. He's making more money than like 45-50% of the players in the NFL next year. And I see both sides. I'm one of these guys that has always yelled, these student athletes, everybody's getting rich except for the product that's on the field. And now, but I also see what potentially are some challenges we've talked about that we've got to fix. But I like the fact, you can't fault a young man or a young woman. They don't know that they're going to make it to the NFL. And to be quite frank, fast pitch softball, for example, there's not a big payday after your playing career's over. Wrestling, collegiate wrestling, same thing. About every sport outside of football, basketball, and baseball, when you're done collegially. Right. And so a lot of these kids, if you get an opportunity to go make $1 million, $2 million, $3 million, I've heard crazy estimates on what potentially young Manning's NIL deal could be when he comes out next year. Some of the numbers I've seen on the internet, which is all speculation, but it doesn't. I don't think it's a big stretch to assume that a guy like this Manning kid down in New Orleans, wherever he goes, could command $10 million,
right?
Or more. And
right.
So you can't fault the kid. They don't know if they're going to get paid after college. A lot of things can happen. This is the way they can go make some money. But I think, one of the things that I've heard consistently down here with all of us experts, that have coffee together every morning, us experts that really know what we're talking about is, what if they did a deal where they said, hey, you've got to, if you do an NIL deal with the school, you have to stay there at least 2 years. You have to stay there a certain period of time. Do you ever see in the future where that could be something that would be helpful? Would it have any effect? What's your perspective on that?
I think we haven't really seen those contracts put in place yet because we don't know what the legislation is going to be. Is that a pay to play scenario where you're forcing kids to? The whole idea of the portal is not to restrict these kids. So if we put together a long contract where we're going to pay you out over a 4-year period, and you don't get paid if you don't stay for 4 years, we haven't seen that legislation play out yet. And so I'm anxious to see. I think that is something that we have had interest in putting together in our group of, how can we, help with institutions by keeping kids here, by paying these contracts out over a 3-4 year period. But, to me, it takes a commitment from the donor group. It takes a commitment from the business group to establish those type of relationships where, maybe a Toyota sponsorship is paying out over a 4-year period. It's all about how we put it into contracts. And so, so it's important that maybe we pay that out over a 4-year period. But we haven't seen that legislation in there that says, if I leave or if I do this, that I no longer get paid. And so we're anxious to see how that plays out. There's a lot of legal, there's a lot of people that say, and we happen to have, we use an attorney out of Kansas City that is probably his name's Mitt Winter. He's probably the best attorney in the NIL space right now. There's a lot of attorneys out there that say they're experts, but this thing's only been around for a year, so I don't know how you're an expert. But we keep up with the times and keep up with the legislation and where things are going. And so we've taken a conservative approach. We don't bend the rules or anything like that. We don't operate much in the gray, and we keep it pretty black and white, pretty straightforward. But we keep a pulse, a thumb on the industry and on legislation. If things change, we certainly would be interested in getting those payments spread out over a 4-year period to keep these kids, at the institution. Because I represent, Six Man Strategies represents student athletes at the University of Kansas. I'm not interested in supporting another institution for the student athlete that I'm representing to go somewhere else. Now we do have some ancillary businesses as well and partnerships with other universities, helping them on the compliance side. But as far as Six Man Strategies goes, we're representing Kansas student athletes, and we hope they stay at Kansas.
It's not a bad time to be doing what you're doing after winning a national title, is it?
There's a lot of interest of these student athletes, of their time and energy. And, the challenge has been these kids have come off of March playing into April. So these guys have been going at it since November playing. And then all of these guys want to do, yes, you can make money and all this, but all they want to do is go home for a little bit because they got to be back by June for workouts and summer school. And so it's a challenge to get on everybody's schedule and things like that. But there's a lot of interest in of their time right now. And that's been fun. But you also have to let them be a family member, a son, a cousin, brother. Let them enjoy the family life too.
We're getting a few questions pop up here, Matt. This one I already know the answer to, but I'm going to ask it anyway. It's the second biggest Cubs fan I know in the entire world. Ronnie Phillips. He says, Matt, do you get a ring? I know the answer to this, but I want you to say it. So.
No, I don't. I was fortunate when I worked for the University of Kansas and was an employee of the University of Kansas. I would receive Final Four rings and Big 12 championship rings and those type of things. I got an Orange Bowl ring. And so, but no, we are NIL group at Kansas is completely separated from the University of Kansas, and the athletic department is, it's completely separated. So I can't have any ties. They can't push people my direction. They can't do anything like that. So we're completely separated. And so, no, I don't get a ring. If they came out with some replicas or something like that, I might buy one.
Well, and that's something I think from an education standpoint, I know at the fan level, at least, there is so much misunderstanding or confusion. They think, well, KU, because I've heard people say this. Well, University of Texas is going to get all the stars because they have the biggest athletic budget and they can go out and allocate money. And that's not how this works. They're completely separate entities that do have rules they have to follow on how this is done. So, it's, of course, lately in the last week, there's been this it's been great entertainment for us. Again, the fan base, Jimbo Fisher, Nick Saban brought us a little Deion Sanders in there. He got in the mix, all this back and forth. And when it was all said and done, I understand what Coach Saban was saying, but he's going to have a hard time finding a lot of sympathy outside of Alabama. He's a legend. He's great. But, he's saying we finished number 2, Texas A&M finished number 1. Why is that? And it's a valid question, but the point is everybody knows why. But Texas A&M, they're not breaking any rules.
Right.
I mean, they're following the rules.
Yeah, and from our vantage point, I don't know the dirty details and things like that of how their collectives and their NIL groups work, but it's pretty straightforward from the NC2A that they consider us boosters, that we're not allowed to get involved in recruiting. We're not allowed to talk to recruits and those type of things. Once a kid's in a transfer portal, we're told not to contact them and those type of things. So there are some restrictions there. Is there some gray area there? Yeah, probably. But that individuals are working in. But my jab at the SEC as an old Big 12 guy, this has been going on for a long time, well before NIL. So I thought it was funny when Deion came in and started throwing jabs at Nick Saban, Coach Saban, and saying stuff about, hey, easy what you say. We'll start uncovering some stuff is basically what he said. But it's those jabs. But what's awesome about it is it's a rivalry. That's what's great.
Yeah.
Now we have a storyline of. I'm sure behind the scenes they're shooting texts to each other and they're having beer at the SEC convention and stuff like that. But on the surface, us fans really like that rivalry now, right?
It's all for the fans. I mean, that's who wins on this deal. The fans win on this deal. Hey, I got another. Are you okay with taking a few more questions?
Love it. Let's go.
Another question popped up. This is from the number 1 Cub fan I know. And he is a huge Cubs fan. This is a great question. Have you seen or heard of any athlete showing frustration with other athletes getting a better NIL deal or even getting an NIL deal?
Yeah. No, you certainly see that. The hard part and what the Supreme Court, obviously they don't care because they don't have to deal with it. NC2A has said all along that they're fear of this. But I think if you talk institutional, if you talk to coaches, they'll tell you their biggest fear over this whole thing is the locker room, right? For example, I use this as an example. I'm not saying there was issues with it, but you have a situation at the University of Kansas where a walk-on makes a two-point conversion against Texas. And Applebee's calls the next day and says, hey, I want to do a deal with the walk-on student athlete, Jared Casey at the University of Kansas. We'd love to do one for their, go for two for one special, which was great. It was fun to put together, and Jared was awesome. But you got a walk-on that, his first year hasn't been there. You got guys that have been there for 4 years, putting in the grind. And, you can certainly see how some of that can be misconstrued in the locker room, and how things can go negative pretty quick for those that think they're deserving of stuff like that. And again, I'm not saying that's happened at Kansas, but I'm saying how it can.
Right.
And so we haven't seen that locker room go south yet, but it's human nature to be jealous, right? It's human nature. And a lot of people say, well, you read on social media that Jared Casey made the catch, but Daniels threw the pass. Like, did he get anything and stuff like that? And then it goes back to marketability, right? Is the most marketable kid at the University of Kansas at that point was Jared Casey, the walk-on. Yep. And I didn't decide that. Applebee's decided that. They wanted to do a deal with Jared Casey. And so, it's certainly, I could see jealousy entering a locker room in a competitive environment. And here's the other thing, guys, is that everybody needs to understand is not every student athlete is paid different or paid the same, right? And so I can use an example on an autographed basketball at Kansas is Ochai Agbaji is going to get paid his signature I'll say this, Phil. If your signature was on a ball, right, and my signature was on a ball, your signature might go for 25 grand. My signature might go for $5.
Well, mine goes. My signature autograph. How it goes for me now is it's one autograph, $5, two for 10. That's how we do it. That's how we did it at our place.
Yeah, that's Oklahoma math right there. So you must be an Oklahoma State guy.
Well, you know. Now that brings up a point. You bring up my Cowboys, okay? Now bring up my Cowboys in football. I believe Mike Gundy's and his staff and the university, and God rest his soul, T. Boone Pickens, that all contributed to what's been a real growth in Oklahoma athletics over the last 20 years. They've made a living going out and getting those no stars, 2 stars, maybe a 3-star kid in football. They develop them. They have a breakout year. What we're all scared of is now they have a breakout year. Somebody's going to come get them, and they're going to go from Oklahoma State to USC or to Texas or to Alabama or, and make that money. I mean, and that's a reality, right?
Yeah. How do you keep them there, right? And we saw it play out in Wichita, whether it was the truth or not. You saw student athletes come out at Wichita State in the basketball program and say, hey, we don't feel loved. We don't have any NIL opportunities. And so we're transferring. And I talked to some of the guys afterwards, and they that's what they were looking for is, hey, I get it. We had a bad year this year, but we just need to feel loved.
Yeah.
Other institutions, the guys are getting NIL opportunities, and at Wichita State we're not. And, so the way I look at it is this is a way for a donor base to show the love, to reward these kids, those type of things. And so because you always have that threat of these kids leaving. Now you see the kids that are still making really good money and they're still leaving. But, these kids, human nature that they think the grass is greener on the other side. They don't know any better. But if you can reward them with business opportunities and car deals and collective opportunities with nonprofits and things like that while they're still here, that is where you engage with these kids, and they'll stay if they're loyal and they're those type of things. But then also you talk about the recruiting, how we can't talk to recruits. Well, the best way to recruit in NIL, the best way would be to cheat and to offer deals, right? You don't do that. The best way to recruit in NIL is to make sure that your current student athletes are participating at a high level in NIL. Because the first thing Bill will tell you, Bill Self at KU will tell you that these kids aren't coming in right now and saying, hey, Bill, how many national championships have you had? And how many Big 12 championships in a row have you had? And those things. Hey, what's my opportunities if I come to Kansas in the NIL space, right? And so at Kansas, we need to make sure that Ochai Agbaji says a very positive answer to that.
Right.
Because him and Christian Brown and Jalen Wilson and those DeJuan Harris, those guys are central to the future of recruiting, right? I mean, if those guys are taken care of, they're going to answer that question the way we want them to answer, which is at Kansas, you get unbelievable opportunities in NIL.
Do you see NIL working its way into the high school ranks more and more?
I do. Keisha is in the state of Kansas is now allowed student athletes to capture opportunities in NIL. I saw somewhere in the state of Kansas, it's legislation where they're allowing it. I do. I see it's going to slowly drip down. And, it's just like anything that happens in the NBA comes down to the NC2A level. Anything that happens in the NBA comes down to the NC2A level and stuff like that. So I think you're going to start, and then it moves down to the high school level. So I think you're going to start seeing that. How marketable are they? I don't know, at that time, but that's where I think you really start seeing the dangers of the NC2A and cheating going on is when the high schoolers can start getting paid, you start getting some hands in there that want to get in on the recruiting side and say, okay, I'll get you a deal with again, like Toyota now, but hey, I want to make sure you're going to a particular school if I get this deal for you in higy school.
Everything. Now, this is just as an old guy. everything's about social media. Is it important for these student athletes to have a big following on social media? Does that increase their value?
Oh, 100%. I think,
Okay.
You see actually YouTube and Twitter and Facebook and those type of services, they actually will pay student athletes for X amount of followers.
Okay.
And so, yeah, that's crucial. The conversations we have with student athletes right now is, hey guys, it's, there's two ways to look at it on your social media. Is if you want to just keep it a fun thing and do those type of things, and that's one way. But you're a business now. You're a business entity, and so this is a vehicle for you to promote businesses. But at the same time, you don't want to just throw up on people. And when somebody gets on and sees Christian Brown on social media, they want to see Christian Brown, the basketball player, and interact with him and get to know him. They don't want to see him promoting a bunch of stuff on social media every time they turn on social media. It kind of turns people off.
Yeah. Now, Matt, from our discussions, just as friends, I'm not the biggest NFL guy in the world. Used to be, not so much anymore. But I'm a huge NCAA football fan. Love it. Some would say I live for it. Friday night lights, Saturday football, my life's complete. Do you see with all the money that's coming in through NIL, do you see the college game and football specifically becoming more like the NFL game with all this money that's going to be floating around for these kids?
Yeah,
Dealing with some of those kind of problems?
Yeah, a little bit. At the end of the day I think you're a Oklahoma State Cowboy. The donor base around there. I'm a Jayhawk. The donor base around here. I'm tied with Wichita State around here with the donor base here. I don't think there is a healthy interest from a donor base to really, really get involved that big financially, right?
Okay.
I think what you're seeing right now is some outliers. Now the outliers happen to pick up a lot of the social media and the media attention and those things like that. And so you're seeing the outliers out there of kids signing an $800,000 deal. You talked about Manning, possibly a $10 million opportunities that will face him. Those are going to continue to happen. Those are outliers. But for the most part, the average kids, the average NIL deal is around $200 nationally. For student athletes. So it's not a big amount. NIL collective groups aren't millionaires over this thing. We're putting it together and structuring deals for these kids because the most marketable they can be is winning on the court, right? Or on the field. So they don't need to be worrying about this type of stuff. So is there going to be some of that? Yes. There's going to be kids that are making significant amount of money, but I think for the most part, you're going to see kids making, if you told me when I was a student athlete as a baseball player, I use athlete loosely because I was a baseball player. But if you would have told me I could have made an extra 10 grand, I'd been doing backflips. Right. So, now, if you would have told me I was making I would make 150 grand, I would have told you you're full of crap. Right. And so, these kids, what's funny is we walked in the first time we met with the basketball team at Kansas. We walked in and said, okay, well, what deals are you looking for? What do you want us to go chase? And every single one of them, their first word of the mouth was free food. So all the things that we can do for you and go, you want free food.
They're still kids.
Right. They're still kids at heart. And those are the things that they're interested in. They like cars. A lot of people get tied up in what type of cars. I'm telling you, how many times we hear, hey, I just need 4 wheels and a car that runs. That's all I need.
Yeah.
Right. And so if everybody's like, you need we did a deal with Remy Martin where on social media, we kind of got some backlash a little bit because we did a deal with a Toyota Camry with him. It's the nicest car that kid's driven,
Yeah.
And it was great. And Remy was awesome about it. He's like, man, this is the best car I've ever driven.
I love it.
That's what we do, right? It's and that's what excites me about the NIL. It's not the big deals of the $10 million deal. That doesn't excite me. What excites me is putting free food on their table and doing a car deal here and there and doing a commercial shoot with Wendy's and doing that type of stuff and doing an autograph signing where we're selling basketballs and stuff like that. That's what excites me. And that's truly what I think is at heart of the NIL is doing that type of stuff.
And I know that about you, Matt. I think where you bring such a unique perspective, and where Sixth Man Strategies brings such a unique perspective, is you've walked in their shoes. You've been a Division I athlete. You've not had any darn money, right?
Right.
And I don't think people fully realize exactly how much time goes into being a Division I athlete. I mean, it's crazy. I know everybody likes to believe that none of these kids go to class and they're just there to play sports and and they roll out the red carpet, because all they ever see, like most people, all they ever see of KU basketball or Alabama football or, here recently, Vanderbilt baseball or Oklahoma State baseball or Texas baseball, all they ever see, I guess I need to say this, or UConn girls basketball or tennis, those kind of schools, they see them when they're winning national titles. That's when most people see them. You're outside of your viewing area. And so they assume that this is an everyday deal, this luxury and all this stuff happening. And the truth is, these are kids. These are just kids. Most of them are 18, 19, 20, at the most 21, 22 years of age. They don't have life experience. So that Camry does mean something to that young man or that young woman. And I appreciate that. And I think that's where you guys bring a unique perspective. I do have a question, though. I get teased being from Kansas, and I do have a Jayhawk sandstone monument at the end of my drive because I've been a Jayhawk fan. I get called a homer down here, and that's okay. Now I am a KU fan during basketball, really, really, really hard. But anyway, I get teased all the time about being a blue blood. KU's a blue blood in basketball. You got your OUs, your Alabamas, your Michigans, your Ohio States, all these schools and the blue bloods in football. Do you see the NIL separating the blue bloods more from everyone else, or are they going to become that much better than everybody else? Or do you think it's going to make the competition greater and more parity?
I think it's more parity, to be honest with you, because again, I look at a donor base that I'm familiar with, having been an assistant AD at Wichita State, for example. If Wichita State donor base decides that they want to get involved in the NIL space, I mean, there's unbelievable. This donor base down here is unreal and can get involved. If Charles Koch decided he wanted to get involved in NIL, it could be a game changer for the university here for Wichita State. And so every institution, I think, has a chance now to compete with the big boys because it's all about an engaged donor base. It's all about an engaged donor base that owns businesses and those type of things. And these student athletes can capitalize on their name, image, likeness by doing things. And I want to be very crystal clear in how NIL works. You don't just hand a kid money. He's got to do something. She's got to do something in return. Okay. Right. And so, but if you have a engaged donor that owns a couple businesses and he wants to do a commercial shoot that, let's be honest, might not provide an unbelievable amount of ROI for his business, but he wants to contribute and help these student athletes. That is the engaged donor base that I'm talking about, right? And so these student athletes have an opportunity to engage. And again, it goes back to the recruiting side. If a current student athlete at any institution says that I'm having unbelievable opportunities here, and they go out and recruit a kid, and the kid comes in and says, hey, what type of opportunities? Is he more likely to go to an institution that says, no, we don't have anything put together for these kids, or I've made some money? And so I think it helps with parity. I honestly do. Obviously some of these bigger institutions like a Texas and a Alabama and all of these, Ohio State, they have larger alumni bases, right? To pull from. And so, they have an opportunity to grow, but that doesn't mean that a Chicago State or somebody like that can't compete in certain spaces if they have an engaged donor base.
I think, I'm going to wrap it up here for us. We've been going about 35 minutes, and I'm going to be respectful of your time. I know we're going to do these regularly, and because I want to help one of the things we want to do at Second Banana Media is get the word out about how it really works, right? I mean, because I think there is so much misinformation out there. But what you just said, we're talking about where it can really help those individual kids. The stories you've given, that's real world stuff that makes a difference for a student athlete's life. I love when you said the average amount's $200. I think everybody thinks everybody's becoming a millionaire because that's what we talk about. But the most important thing I got to ask you before we get off here, Second Banana Media, we need to get in on some of that free food stuff. Is there a big market for a 56-year-old chubby bald guy out there?
No, they don't want that.
They don't want that.
They don't want guys that are going to, go up 2 or 3 times at the buffet. I mean, and trust me, I'm a big boy now, so they aren't doing deals for me or your boy Mike Chrisman over here.
Mikey.
Yeah, so they're not doing deals for us, but there's some cool things that are going on in that space. There's a group down here and actually in Wichita that's putting a national company together that is working with area restaurants that if a kid goes in and they have an app, if a kid goes in and subscribes to this, they can go to any restaurant on their list. And as long as they are there and post on their social media that they are at, say Wendy's and, come by and check out Wendy's. They're running a great special at, $5.99, whatever. They can get their free meal. And
that's
so it's
awesome.
Pretty cool stuff,
Yeah, it is.
Because that's real stuff right there. I mean, food, people don't realize is how important it is. I told you the kids wanted food. That's cool. They get tired of eating the same cafeteria food. They get tired of those things. And, a lot of people think they eat like kings, and majority, yeah, you do at the Power 5, but you get down to the mid-major level. These guys don't eat like kings.
Right.
There's a misconception of how well the NC2A and these institutions take care of these kids. And so anything counts. And so, my plug for NIL is I think this is an opportunity to get involved. How cool is it that you can now give to a student athlete and, he can call your grandma on the phone and wish her a happy birthday. Right. And, they couldn't do that before. They want paid for their time. Right.
Who doesn't?
We all should be paid for our time, but,
right.
But yeah, I mean, it's, you get to engage with the student athletes now more than ever. Because they've been closed off and protected by these universities and things like that for right reasons. But now that they're open, the kids that want to be available and want to do things can make good money. And I say good money, they can make $2,500 here, $5,000 there, $600 here. That's money to these guys.
There's a university that for a couple of our companies, I said, I want to get involved in this. I didn't really know how it works. So I just picked up the phone and I called and I ended up leaving a voicemail at the compliance department at the university. You're already laughing at me. And said, hey, yeah, this is Phil Nichols. Yeah, I'd really like to talk to this so-and-so kid about doing a name, image, likeness deal. If somebody can call me back. And I get a call back 2 days later. It says, yeah, this is so-and-so with university's compliance department. You were asking about how to go about doing that. And I go, yeah. And he goes, well, this ain't it. I said, oh, okay.
Yeah. So, that's funny.
But there are, I think as time goes by, people will learn. It's like anything, right, Matt? They'll learn how it navigates, how it works, what the real benefit is for many of these kids, the majority of these kids, as far as the stories you shared. I really appreciate you sharing that. I think that, there's billions of dollars made in collegiate athletics every year. And I think it's good that the kids are able to, the majority of the kids are able to get some free food, a few dollars to put in their pocket for all the blood, sweat, and tears they do out there. That's just my opinion, me personally as a sports fan. I think it's good. I think we'll figure out the nuance of the program as it continues to grow and get bigger and there's more understanding.
Yeah, I think it's going to level out. And again, it comes down to education and things like that. And I think you're going to see federal legislation come down. I think the only way this field levels is if there's federal legislation, because if
Okay.
each state is operating completely different, it's going to get nuts pretty quick. And so for a minority amount of people, right, it's a finite amount. It's your quarterback at Alabama, it's your quarterback at Michigan, those type of things. But for the most part, the 99% student athlete is going to be in the wheelhouse that what we talked about is, there's some good money. As a student athlete at Kansas, you can do really well if you play basketball there, and you're a position player at Kansas football. You can do really well in NIL. But what's the definition of really well, right?
Right.
Right. That's what everybody's different. Everybody thinks really well is hundreds of thousands of dollars, and I disagree with that. So I think really well as a student athlete is putting extra food on the table and having some walk around money and that type of stuff. But we do have student athletes that do make a significant amount of money too.
Well, Matt, I want to thank you for joining us today. I look forward to doing this again very soon. I know we've got another gentleman that's that has some experience with another university that you know very well that wants to join in at some point. We'll get him out here as well. But I appreciate you sharing your knowledge, your information. I am waiting for an answer on why anybody would want 865 pounds on their back. You can explain that to me at another date. But again, thank you to our special guest, Matt Baty, founder of Six Man Strategies. And we invite you all back to the next edition of Second Banana Media. Appreciate all of you very much. Have a great day.
Thanks, Phil.